The grand ballroom of the Boston Harbor Hotel smelled of expensive orchid arrangements, roasted prime rib, and rich cigar smoke. Over 250 of Massachusetts' top commercial developers, architects, and city officials were seated around round tables covered in heavy white linen. At the head table sat my father, Arthur Sterling, dressed in a custom tuxedo, surrounded by my younger brother, Julian, and Julian's wife, Vanessa. I sat 3 tables back, near the service kitchen doors, next to my husband, Marcus. On the massive projector screen behind the stage, a slideshow displayed the crowning achievement of Sterling Commercial Builders, the Harborview Tech Center, a $45 million 12-story green-certified office complex overlooking the bay. The podium light caught the gold trophy resting on the mahogany stand, Boston Commercial Developer of the Year. Tonight, my father's booming voice echoed through the sound system as he tapped his champagne glass. We celebrate 40 years of Sterling Builders, but more importantly, we celebrate the young visionary who stepped up when this company needed modern leadership, my son, Julian Sterling. The room exploded into loud applause. Julian stood up, buttoning his jacket with a confident, arrogant smile, taking in the admiration of the room. My father raised his hand to quiet the crowd. Building the Harborview complex required ruthless negotiation, vision, and the guts to make tough calls. Julian delivered all 3. Some people in this family thought the project was too risky. They wanted us to stay small, but true leaders push forward while others doubt. He turned his eyes toward my table. The light hit his cold blue eyes. "To my daughter, Evelyn," Dad said into the microphone, his tone dropping into a icy public dismissiveness. "Thank you for handling the administrative paperwork in the background. But as we announce the new board of directors tonight, it's clear who possesses the DNA to lead this legacy. Julian, come take your place." In the second row, the city's chief building inspector and 2 senior bank partners exchanged uncomfortable glances. They knew the truth, but nobody spoke up. My brother walked up the stage steps, took the microphone, and smiled down at the crowd. "Thank you, Dad. I couldn't have built Harborview without proving that outdated caution has no place in modern construction." I sat perfectly still, holding my water glass so tightly the crystal nearly cracked. I was 36 years old. For 11 years, I had served as the VP of Project Engineering for Sterling Commercial Builders. I held a master's degree in structural engineering from MIT. Julian had a communications degree and had joined the firm 4 years ago after failing his real estate licensing exam twice. What no one in that room knew, because my father had spent 18 months erasing my name from every press release, was that I designed the load-bearing framework for Harborview. I secured the environmental clearance permits that saved the project from a $6 million EPA shutdown. And most importantly, I was the one who personally solved the structural foundation crisis when the soil near the pier began shifting during excavation. Julian hadn't built Harborview. Julian had selected the interior marble tiles and managed the launch party catering. Marcus leaned over, his hand firm and warm over mine under the table. "You don't have to sit here and swallow this, Evelyn," he whispered quietly. "The city permits bear your engineering stamp, not his." "Not yet," I whispered back, my voice steady despite the fury racing through my veins. "Let him finish his speech." Before Julian could conclude his presentation, a waiter slid a discreet beige envelope onto my table. Inside was a printed copy of the board's structural transition decree, signed by my father an hour before the gala. It stated that effective immediately, my position as VP of Project Engineering was abolished, absorbed under Julian's new executive entity. Attached was a severance release offering me 6 months of pay, provided I signed a 2-year non-compete clause prohibiting me from practicing structural engineering in the state of Massachusetts. My father hadn't just given Julian my project. He was trying to bury my entire career so Julian wouldn't look like an imposter. I looked up at the stage. Julian was holding the gold trophy high above his head while the cameras flashed. I stood up from my chair. The heavy wood scraped sharply against the marble floor. My mother, sitting beside my father, caught my eye and mouthed silently, "Don't do this tonight, Evelyn. Let your brother have his night." I didn't walk toward the exit doors. I turned and walked straight toward the main stage. The room fell into a tense, sudden hush as my heels clicked against the wooden stage steps. Julian's arrogant smile stiffened. He adjusted his microphone, trying to maintain his suave posture in front of the 250 developers and city investors. "Evelyn," he laughed nervously into the mic, "if you're looking for the dessert buffet, it's downstairs." A faint ripple of awkward laughter echoed through the front tables, but it died quickly. I didn't reach for Julian's microphone. I walked straight past him to the podium where my father stood. I placed the open beige envelope containing the non-compete clause directly on top of his printed speech notes. "You want me to sign a non-compete prohibiting me from practicing structural engineering in Massachusetts for 2 years, Dad?" I asked. My voice wasn't raised, but in the quiet ballroom, the podium microphone caught every word clearly. My father's face flushed a deep, mottled red. He quickly tapped the microphone off, but the room had already heard it. "Sit down, Evelyn," Arthur whispered through gritted teeth, leaning across the wooden stand. "You're embarrassing yourself in this family. We'll discuss your severance package in private on Monday." "We aren't discussing severance, Dad," I replied, standing tall. "Because to fire a chief structural engineer, you first need a board quorum. And to claim credit for Harborview Tech Center, your new CEO actually needs to hold the municipal master permit." Julian stepped forward, his eyes flashing with irritation. "I run the development division, Evelyn. The board approved the project layout 3 months ago. Stop acting like a bitter mid-level manager because Dad chose vision over your bureaucratic spreadsheets." Marcus walked up to the edge of the stage, carrying my dark leather briefcase. He opened it and pulled out 3 thick, blue-stamped municipal documents, handing them to Margaret Vance, the head of the Boston Zoning and Environmental Appeals Board, who was sitting at table 1. "Margaret," Marcus said calmly to the board head, "page 4 of the municipal filing, if you please." Margaret put on her reading glasses and opened the blue folder. As she read the bold text near the bottom seal, her eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Arthur," Margaret said, looking up at my father on stage, her voice carrying across the quiet front tables. "Sterling Commercial Builders isn't listed as the primary permit holder for the Harborview Foundation retention wall. Evelyn Sterling Engineering LLC is." A sudden wave of whispers broke out across the ballroom. Julian's jaw dropped. He looked frantically between my father and the board head. "What is she talking about? It's a Sterling Builders project. We funded it." "You funded the construction, Julian," I said, turning to face my brother. "But 11 months ago, when the soil near the pier began shifting toward the harbor line, the city issued an emergency stop work order. You were in Miami on vacation. Dad was golfing in Scottsdale." I stepped closer to the projection screen, pointing up at the massive photo of the glass tower. "To prevent a $6 million EPA fine and total structural failure, I personally posted my own engineering license and personal credit as the sole indemnifier for the foundation retention wall," I explained to the room of developers. "I formed an independent LLC to hold the soil stability permit because Sterling Builders' liability insurance refused to cover the pier risk. I saved this project." My father grabbed the edge of the podium, his hands shaking slightly. "You were an employee of Sterling Builders. That work belongs to the firm." "Check the master agreement, Dad," I replied smoothly. "You refused to sign the liability waiver last November because you thought the pier would collapse and ruin your balance sheet. You forced me to take the risk alone. I took the risk. I hold the permit. And without my active engineering license attached to that retention wall, the City of Boston cannot issue Harborview its final occupancy certificate tomorrow morning." Julian turned pale. "The tenants? The tech firm is moving in on Monday. They've already transferred the $2 million down payment." "Then I suggest your new visionary CEO figure out how to certify a 12-story foundation by Monday morning without my signature," I said. My mother stood up from the head table, her face pale with shame. Evelyn, please. He's your father. Julian is your brother. Don't ruin our family's reputation over a title. I looked at my mother, the woman who had watched my father erase my work for over a decade just to keep peace in her lavish home. Family doesn't erase your labor to build a pedestal for a favored son, Mom, I said softly. I picked up the non-compete document from the podium, tore it cleanly down the middle, and let the pieces fall onto my father's polished leather shoes. The occupancy certificate is frozen as of 8 a.m. tomorrow, I announced to my father and brother. If you want my signature on that retention wall permit, you won't be mailing me a non-compete. You'll be meeting my legal team at the city auditor's office. I turned on my heel, took Marcus's hand, and walked down the center aisle of the ballroom, leaving my father, my brother, and 250 of Boston's top executives in total silence. By 7:30 a.m. on Monday morning, the glass doors of the Boston City Auditor's office were surrounded by high-powered attorneys, city inspectors, and frantic corporate executives. The $45 million Harborview Tech Center was scheduled to welcome its anchor tenant, a major global tech firm, at 9 a.m. But without the final municipal occupancy certificate, security guards stood at the glass entrance of the glass tower, refusing to let moving trucks or employees enter the building. Inside the third-floor conference room, my father sat across the long mahogany table, looking 10 years older than he had at the Gala 48 hours prior. Julian sat beside him, his tie loosened, nervously chewing his thumbnail as three corporate lawyers shuffled stack after stack of financial disclosures. Marcus and I sat on the opposite side, accompanied by our lead attorney, Sarah Jenkins. Evelyn, my father began, his voice raspy and devoid of the grand authority he had projected on stage. The tenant is threatening to invoke their delay penalty. $50,000 every single day the doors remain locked. If they break the lease, Sterling Builders faces complete bankruptcy. Is this really what you wanted? To destroy your own father's legacy? You destroyed your legacy the moment you sacrificed truth for optics, Dad, I replied calmly. You didn't build Sterling Builders alone. I spent 11 years working 80-hour weeks, stabilizing shifting piers, signing safety permits, and keeping your firm solvent while you built a pedestal for a son who couldn't read a structural blueprint. Sarah slid a crisp 4-page legal agreement across the table. Here are the conditions under which Mrs. Sterling Ross will sign off on the municipal foundation certification, Sarah stated. Complete independent transfer. Evelyn Sterling Engineering LLC retains sole ownership of the Harborview structural retention wall and pier rights, leasing the engineering certification back to the city under a 10-year municipal contract. Financial restitution, Sterling Commercial Builders will immediately disperse all backdated structural consulting fees owed to Evelyn for the past 3 years, totaling $1.4 million. Public correction. Sterling Builders will issue a formal retraction to the Boston Business Journal and the board, explicitly correcting the public record regarding the architectural design and structural execution of Harborview. Corporate restructuring. Julian Sterling will step down from all engineering oversight roles, remaining strictly in non-operational client relations under direct third-party board audit. Julian slammed his hand on the table. This is extortion, Dad. You can't sign this. She's stripping us of everything. If he doesn't sign it by 8:45 a.m., Sarah replied coolly. Evelyn revokes her personal indemnity bond with the city. The building inspector will issue a formal condemnation notice for the pier line, and your anchor tenant will break their lease by noon. My father looked at the ticking clock on the wall. He looked at Julian, whose frantic rage only highlighted his total inability to solve the crisis. For the first time in his life, Arthur Sterling faced the unvarnished reality of what he had created, a favored son who could only consume success, and an honest daughter who actually knew how to build it. With a trembling hand, my father picked up his pen and signed every single page. The aftermath reshaped our family dynamic permanently. The public retraction published in the Boston Business Journal sent shockwaves through the local real estate community. While Sterling Commercial Builders survived the Harborview launch, their reputation as an untouchable family dynasty was shattered. The board instituted strict independent governance, stripping Julian of all executive power and placing him on a fixed administrative salary. 6 months later, Evelyn Sterling Engineering LLC opened its new headquarters in downtown Boston. Free from my father's shadow, my firm quickly secured 3 major municipal infrastructure contracts across Massachusetts, hiring 6 top structural engineers who valued transparency and technical excellence. My mother tried calling a few times, offering soft, hesitant invitations to Sunday dinners. I made my boundaries clear. I loved her, but I would no longer participate in family gatherings built on silent compliance and manufactured appearances. One evening in late autumn, as rainfall tapped gently against the windows of my new corner office overlooking the harbor, my phone chimed with a text from my father. Evelyn, the city auditor released the annual engineering safety ratings today. Your firm took first place. You were always the real builder in this family. I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to say it. I looked at the message for a long moment. I felt no surge of triumph, nor did I feel bitterness. I picked up my pen, signed off on the final structural blueprint for a new green pier project, and set the phone aside. I didn't need his validation to know my worth anymore. I had built my own foundation, solid, unshakable, and entirely my own.